Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording and then start the event, and then just for reference, this is going to be, I think, really helpful to the discussion in general. I brought a map, which are not always easy to find. I mean, I know you can kind of screen cap one if you're like really careful about getting it kind of between frames. But we have a map, just to help us know where everything is. So the idea for tonight's event was that, Rosaluna and Glaciela, story spoilers ahead, for not the last week's chapter, but the week before that, and kind of stuff before that too. Since everything has happened, they are kind of fighting for control of the country, literally fighting for control of the country. Wezette is in a bit of a civil war, but for the most part, they kind of agree on most things, and that the people need more power than they had under Curie. Curie was wrong, that the future should not go forward in this way. They're both anti-monarchists, but there are a number of things that they disagree on, other than just who should lead Wezette into the future. One of those things is borders, and whether they should be open or whether they should be closed. I think this is a fascinating question. We have a lot of lore to go on, and even just this map really just kind of opens up a lot of questions about that particular debate. So since I invited you here, Caveman, to be our Rosaluna so that I can be our Glaciela, I would like to give you the opportunity to start or to choose who starts this.
No, definitely. Once again, I'm Caveman. I've been on a few of his videos now. Nice to see you all again. Good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever.
Yeah,
as far as lore goes, I actually been finding it really interesting between these two sisters, because their plight with their country kind of parallels everything that's happened in our world, as far as, like, if you take a look at the French Revolution, or more recently, when the Bolsheviks were thrown out of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something that I can see happening in wotv. It's just a matter of will Glaciela be able to unify her people, or will Rosaluna see Glaciela as an extremely weak leader, which, in my opinion, she kind of does. And that was a big issue with the Russians.
Ooh, throwing jabs at your opponent already. Jeez.
Yes.
You gotta have the personal attacks so early. Gracious.
Well, if you've read the Communist Manifesto like I had to, my teacher was quite the history buff. They saw I forget the king's name, but they saw him as an extremely weak leader when they overthrew his reign.
Mm-hmm. The Tsar.
The Tsar, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the Tsar allowed corruption to pretty much run rampant, much like how right now Glaciela's letting happen inside the story. Once again, spoilers. She just dealt with a local noble.
Yeah, I was about to say, I happened to take a screenshot of her dealing with that problem, just in case. Not in case you were going to say that, but I do have that screenshot in case you want to say she didn't deal with that problem admirably.
No, she very much
pretty decisively dealt with that.
She waited till it festered, though. You can't. It's like she's playing a game of whack-a-mole. When in reality, what she should be doing is taking the. I'm willing to bet that the country's run very much like how Russia was before the 1900s, before World War I, as a fiefdom.
Yeah, that's kind of the parallel that I see.
Which means the peasants had no land rights.
Mm-hmm.
So everything Rosaluna's saying, you would need to take the land rights away from the nobles, take away their power, and allow for the peasants to buy or to be given their land. And you can't exactly have foreigners intervening when you're going through an upheaval like that.
Okay, so that is your concern, that foreigners are going to intervene, that like like specifically, what do you think is going to happen, and maybe who? Because you can kind of see who we as a country border right now, and you can think about kind of the conflicts that are going on in the area. What do you think is going to happen?
So as far as the border, obviously, as far as with wotv, you do have the remnants of Moraga's army. That's a very big threat already. They could be marauders, they could become bandits, pirates. Hell, they could even be doing like if wotv has its own form, they could be drug dealers for all we know.
Oh, sure.
wotv has never gone that deep, but it's pretty obvious that Moraga's men, with the remnants of his army, are obviously being bought by the nobles to protect their interests from Glaciela.
Okay.
The men that attacked Glaciela and her sister at their duel were remnants from Moraga's army with that noble. So that's something where closing down the border, you could stem the tide of that. And it would also allow you to get your country under control and to stop the banditry.
Okay.
And
so you agree that we have a problem with the nobles trying to usurp power from whoever takes control of the country. Like, even if they are deposed, even if we take their land, even if we distribute it out to the people, we still have them wanting to retake their power. They're still they still bring in people potentially through the borders for a coup. But here's my concern with that, though. After, I had to take several arrows for you, sister. They're inside the country. We probably, our army kind of got decimated by Jaden. We have some of the largest, just in terms of the perimeter of our borders is larger than any other country except maybe Horn. So, committing to defending even the borders that border other countries, in which case we're a little bit better positioned than Horn, but still probably worse than any other country. We just have a massive border to defend. Our army has recently been decimated. Then, after our army was decimated, we went into a civil war. The reason Rogal even had to call in mercenaries is because of how few soldiers we actually... He couldn't even find his own people to do a coup. He had to get people from Finis. So, what makes you think that we have the army to commit to defending the Finis border when we just got through an assassination attempt inside of it? Do we not need defenses? I mean, should we not have maybe a security detail? Should there not be defenses? I mean, I don't disagree that we need defenses from that. I think that's a serious concern, but I think that they need to be here and not necessarily on our borders. If people come in from Finis and they want to contribute in some way, we should let them. This is a pretty harsh and desolate land, and most of our population tends to be in the north where it's the coldest. People who actually choose to be here, I mean, we should kind of respect that and deal with the problems where they happen, because we need to rebuild. Again, our army went up against basically a firing squad when Jaden came in, and that was with Mont helping. Oh no, that was without Mont helping. Mont cleaned that up by pretty much wiping out the castle guard after that. We need, and Finis has no leadership. I understand that there is some concern. I mean, we saw the ends of that. I can't deny that. I'm glad you brought that up, in fact. But at the same time, we need military. These people are coming here looking for jobs, essentially. We can allow them to be hired as mercenaries, or we can hire them for our own military after it's been defeated. I mean, they don't have any military leaders. Kilfei, gone. Aldoa, who is, I don't know, kind of like their de facto queen, kind of. I don't think that ever got made official, because they were trying to do a thing with Horn at the time, but she was the bottom bitch, as Butters would say. I don't know why Glaciela knows South Park like that, but she does. Just don't question it. Look at our other borders, though. Just to kind of hammer this point home, I think Finis is arguably the best place the place that we most likely need defenses, because Leonis is like just the worst off. I mean, the entire country was destroyed by miasma. Everybody has been pushed out as refugees. All of the Leonis refugees that were going to come across our border are here. That's already happened. Most of them probably went to Horn, though, and we have a tiny border with Horn. And, by the way, folks, if you're looking for who to vote for out of the two of us, I have a personal sisterhood pact with the Queen of Horn. So I can assure you that that border will be safe. They also are on the other side of Finnis, so if Finnis ever organizes something more serious, we kind of have them pinned in on both sides. So there's a lot of reasons why, you know, a more organized threat wouldn't come from Finnis, and Leonis is allied with Horn. We're de facto kind of in alliance with them. And the main fighting that's happening is happening in Ovis with Heinler right now. I'm not sure what's going on in Rundle, but I don't think we can quite count them out of it, and they're right there on it. And then the Crystal Sanctum's right there in the middle of that. So maybe we'll see some people fleeing through the water from Ovis. But again, I think for the same reasons we should take them in. And in fact, we should probably be a little less scared of them being bandits as maybe Finnis. But I think that we should, instead of like discouraging people, refugees, fleeing from the destruction that is happening in Ovis, and also that will be happening in Ovis with the Realm Scourge heading that way, we should be welcoming those people in through the sea if we can. So, sorry, I took up a lot of time there. Do you have anything to say to that? Jeez.
No. I do agree that Leonis is definitely the lesser of two evils as far as our border goes.
Mm-hmm.
But Venice is still very much an issue here.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can bring these people into our army, but they have no allegiance to us. There's no tie to our lands with them. The minute another Venice leader comes along, they'll betray us.
Mm-hmm.
After all, what good is our coin when we have snakes literally in our midst? I say we take these peasants, we do help them by bringing them into the army, giving them a decent wage so they can rebuild their towns when their duty is done. Sort of a limited service. We bring them in, we use them to secure the border, and we provide them with coin. When they return home, they can use the coin to start new farms, rebuild their farms or their family holdings, or buy new land.
I like at least half of that idea.
I know I'm not trying to sound too much like Trump here. Oh God, how does Rosaluna know about that? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Same way Glaciela knows about South Park. It's the far plane, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever need an answer for this kind of thing, we saw it in the far plane.
Yeah, I blame those Mughals.
Yeah.
And their darn propaganda.
Yeah, it's all Mughal propaganda. Yes, you're right.
As far as letting refugees in, how can we let refugees from other countries in when we can't even feed our own? We need to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. I agree, but we need people to rebuild. Like, we are... One of the reasons that our farms aren't working, other than, you know, we're the Ice Kingdom. But that's always been our problem. That's something that we have learned to work around. And we've worked around it through manpower. And we just don't have that right now. I do like the idea of maybe taking them into the military, though not necessarily to defend the border. By your own logic, that doesn't seem to be a good plan, because if you're worried about them being traitors, then charging them with defending the border is kind of a problem. Also, I think
No. The soldiers, refugees and remnants from Moraga's army, I suggest we do not bring in at all.
Okay.
They have no allegiance to us. We need to focus on our people.
Okay, so you're taking the civilians and putting them on the border. You're assuming they're going to be more loyal.
Bingo.
Okay. I think that's fairer, but here's what I would do. I would take in roughly anyone that really wanted to come, but how do you... I do think you raise a good question here in how do you get them to feel as though they are no longer allegiant to Finnis and now really a part of Wezette. Well, there is one thing that we have more than almost any other kingdom, other than just border perimeter or coastline. We have land. We have a lot of land. I mean, why not some sort of a 3 acres and a mule program and have them contribute to the reconstruction of the country similar to Roosevelt's CCC. I forget exactly what that stands for, but I was reading about it in a park this weekend. It's like the Civilian Conservation Corps, I think. Mm-hmm. It was very, it was an enlistment program for sure, but they were building national parks, and I'm sure that we could use a similar program to rebuild farms, to rebuild destroyed villages, to just repopulate our cities. Yeah, and I think that giving them ownership, exactly, and I think giving them actual ownership of land within our country, like, then they have something to fight for and something to defend. We are giving them a chance to start over. And I think that, kind of making it having them take home money, they're still thinking about their future allegiance as being in Finnis. But if they are building a future on our land, how do they not think of themselves as citizens of Wezette?
What's good for the goose isn't always good for the gander. I mean, it all sounds good, but we're still giving away our land to foreigners. We should be giving it to our people first.
Well, absolutely. Like, if we have people within our country that do not currently own land that want to work for, we should absolutely give them the same deal as the refugees. I have no problem in conceding to that. I would even put them first in line. The thing is, we have a lot of land and not a lot of people. Even before the war, we had more land than we knew what to do with necessarily. It takes a lot of effort to rebuild, and I'm not sure that we've ever had something like a CCC. I mean, we haven't had the most compassionate rulership. If this is anything like the Tsarist Russia, we're built up in exactly one place, the national capital, and everything else has fuck all been done with it. We need to rebuild all of that outlying civilian infrastructure. We need to rebuild cities in the north, and we need to build things that should have been built hundreds of years ago. There's a whole south of our country that we don't even mess with for whatever reason.
Yeah, you can't really tell from the map. I'm wondering if it's because of mountains.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that this is the best map that we can go for lore, but I'm not really sure. It's just my understanding that they're in the north
as well, and I've been looking. It's like, what about the coastal areas?
Yeah,
is there any natural rivers in that? But you would think they would have a detailed map, but they really don't. And I can't really tell if it's all mountainous, if it's tundra, or are we dealing with a Russia where it's just vast empty ice sheets? Or are we dealing more with a Sweden where you have forest upon forests that are just mountainous?
And really it could be any of those things, but I would just think from the latitude, from the fact that it's kind of over here next to Leonis, that it would have to be a lot more temperate. So I would have to assume that for whatever reason, the reign of idiots that we have had for the last hundreds of years built up a defensible refuge during the great wars caused by Gilgamesh in the north, where they couldn't be touched, and basically abandoned the developable or arable land to our south. But I guess we'd still defend it? I'm not sure. I think we need people to develop that land, though, if we're going to solve the food problem that we're facing. And I think that given that we have probably more land below a certain latitude that is probably potentially, with a little bit of development, maybe if there's a lot of trees and stuff, developable than even a neighboring kingdom like Leonis that is that does well. Then, you know, assuming the land itself is arable, or we can do something with it over time, I think we, you know, by enlisting the people and by enlisting the refugees, they're definitely going to come from, I mean, Oberon has 2 rings and he's gone crazy. There's also a thing called the Realm Scourge, I'm pretty sure you noticed recently. There's going to be a lot of refugees coming in, and I think that we are potentially a nation that could put them to use in building a stronger Wezette than has ever existed before. A path towards a future where we could be the kingdom we always should have been to begin with. Like, just look at how big we are on the map, and we stuck it out in the north? What are we doing?
Yeah, I've been, as I said, I've always been mulling over what it's like in the south.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like all the events happens here in the north, at least story-wise for the game. Hell, I even loaded up at Brave Exvius, because I know this is like the same world but different time. But
Yeah.
I
So
can't really tell.
So this area, you know, the clouds that are to the west of the Den of the Dragon King, I think?
Yeah.
That's roughly where Ardra is. But as you can see on this map, there's actually additional land to our continental landmass beyond Rundle that just doesn't get talked about. There's also like some barrier island somewhere, I think. I've seen a bigger picture of this somewhere. I just don't want to go and find it, but one of the answers to the question that we've been mulling over, like if we're trying to fill in our gaps in wotv knowledge with like real world parallels, is that a lot of, from my understanding, you get a bit more deserty when you're getting into kind of the southern Russian territories. You're getting you're bordering into the Middle East. You're getting a lot more of that type of terrain in there, or some sort of gradient in between the two. So maybe it's just deserty. I don't know.
Yeah, but this, to be honest though, you would think that this would be in the far north. Considering how the game represents pretty much Wezette as a frozen wasteland. Which, you are right, the further south you get, the more arable the land should get, and the warmer it should be.
Well, I mean, and again, if we're looking at Russia, which is kind of like this, but like if you rotated the map about 90 degrees counterclockwise, you got like Russia China up there. The one that's shaped like China to me is Finis. It's just really tiny. It's tiny China, which is funny. But if we're thinking about it as Russia, this also kind of fits because St. Petersburg is in, I mean, not in the very north, but it's more in the north, like maybe, you know, on the main of the Wolf.
Yeah, it's definitely in there.
But it's up there compared to the rest of the country, and like I said before, well, honestly, the commies didn't really build up much of that. They did a lot more than the Tsars ever did, and then, you know, Putin kind of took all the stuff from the people and sold it to the oligarchs, essentially, with more steps. But so it really hasn't ever been built out, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's really the same for Wezette, that they have a lot of land that they just haven't done anything with because it wasn't near where the monarchy was. Because again, I mean, this world has been going through like the Gilgamesh Wars, you would assume, for the last 100 or so years, so maybe they really did try to hide in the most uninvadable place possible. I mean, who's had a fun time invading Russia? Who has made it to St. Petersburg?
As far as I know, no one.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, the Germans almost did it, then winter hit. And Napoleon before, but the same thing happened.
Yeah, I think my understanding of what happened to the Germans was kind of what happened to the Russians when they initially invaded Ukraine. They just got stuck in that awkward season, just got stuck, and then it froze.
Yeah, the Ukrainian situation is it's starting to heat up. Apparently,
Yeah.
drones are hitting Moscow, so that's never fun.
It's hard to pull for something that you know is an escalation in war, but they're really sticking up for
Another thing
themselves.
that parallels with Russia is that up until like the
Actually,
1920s and
shit.
30s,
No, 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 no,
the
no, no. Finis
Industrial
looks like
Revolution.
Ukraine. Finis looks like look at Finis, right? That's
Oh
Ukraine.
shit, it does.
It's
Yes.
definitely. Good
Um.
lord. Okay.
So the whole thing with Rundal, um, obviously Rundal is in the middle of a industrial revolution,
Yeah.
but it hasn't really stuck into. It seems to have somewhat stuck into Horn. Um, but it hasn't seen, at least as far as we know, hit Leonis, or maybe it has. We just never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Venice goes, and Wezette, I don't think they ever participated in like gunpowder in that. So, um,
I think part of this is the influence of the Arms Dealers Guild.
so I can acquiesce that taking in refugees would be helpful, coming from Ovis, from that area of the world where they are experimenting with gunpowder, uh, only from those areas. Because using the invention of gunpowder and Magitech, we could build around and through mountains.
Yeah.
It would help.
Oh yeah. Actually, yes. And
That's where I will acquiesce. The only reason I would let them in is to do like a research study.
see, I'm over
Get some of
here.
the brightest people.
I'm over here imagining Abbott just shooting mountains. He would love that. He'd love it.
And
We gotta put these
using
people to work so they
electric-
quit killing people.
yeah, put them to work. Have them develop new technologies to help us bore through and develop new mines, bore through the mountains so we can establish bigger, larger towns, and to create sort of a railroad as well, or some form of road that can help connect some of these smaller villages to allow for
Mhm.
trade to be better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
While
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
also remain vigilant on our borders.
Yeah, we are a very large kingdom, so a rail network would absolutely make sense. Way way more than roads, and this is what Russia did, is they industrialized too, and really like the only places that ended up getting built up outside of St. Petersburg were the places that St. Petersburg connected to via the rail network. So that is a crucial part. So like. Oh, but like, yeah, magic.
I mean, we didn't really see much of magic tech outside
But-
of like events.
So, like, canonically, we should be about 500 years before FFB. We are in a different part of the world, so there could be. I mean, there shouldn't be like trade between these two. So technology may not advance at the same rate. But you know, they're working on airships maybe 100 years before the story starts, and maybe 400 years in our future. We could definitely get some trains going. Yeah, we could get Magitech. If we could build the frost golem or whatever, we can build a train. Why not?
I mean, it only makes sense.
We have the magic technology. Let's build it.
Yeah, that ice golem is definitely something that is an enigma in the lore. Because it's like, where the hell... When I first encountered it, I was just like, where the hell did this thing come from? Like, how did they build this? So obviously there is knowledge of a rudimentary form of like golem tech or magic tech.
Yeah, the the rooms inside of I think Wezette Castle or under Wezette Castle, that they were raiding to shut down the magical connection with the golem, very much look like kind of, I mean, kind of reminds me of like Final Fantasy VII Hojo shit, but also specifically the technology that we see Sodley working with Exia in a lot of ways. And also it has the so it also has the Crystal Sanctum logo. So if you want an answer to how they got such crazy tech, look for the logos all over them. They're all Crystal Sanctum. It's all come from Sodley. He's used his thousands and thousands of years and the knowledge that he has gained from Gilgamesh of the technology of the future in Palladia, which is even more technologically advanced than FFBE by like probably 1,000 or more years easily.
Even that's the second world that
yes, that's the world that we're not in. Yeah, that's with Emperor Vlad. So like the technology that made Gilgamesh's original armor, which he left in Palladia, I guess. Yes, because Reagan ended up with it later.
Now my question is with this catastrophe, with that Magitech monster, like I know in the lore that he said that it even is scared even Vlad, and I'm like, from my memory of Vlad, he was basically Palpatine.
You mean the Realm Scourge? Yeah.
Yes. It's obviously a piece of Magitech that's gone berserk.
Kind of like the well, it reminds me a lot of the like big final boss, like not kind of the fake out biggest, the sin of season 2 of FFB. I forgot what that was, but like the thing that could just fucking blow up the planet if it wanted to, wipe out everyone, so it was just Vlad and he could just be king of a fucking graveyard forever.
Yeah.
This seems like a prototype for that, is kind of how I'm reading that. I wasn't really able to look this up properly during the debate, but another parallel between the Realm Scourge and Weapon is it seems that they need some sort of a power core to be complete, and that power core usually comes in the way of a specially gifted person. With the Realm Scourge, this has been revealed to be Amnilus, and it may actually be at its full power now, as Gilgamesh notices that it's transformed and that it seems to have taken on more power than ever before. This is similar to the awakening that we saw with the Weapon in FFB Season 2 when Physalis was integrated into the core to awaken the beast, as the lore says. So I just thought that was an interesting addition to this whole conversation, because there are really strong parallels between the Realm Scourge and Weapon, and potentially maybe this is an alternate form of Weapon that, you know, awoke independently of being kind of awakened by having its core activated. Maybe it awakened independently and found a core separately, accidentally, through being sealed away by Amnilus. At least, that is my lore theory for the video.
But the fact remains, at least some form of active patrols must be maintained along the border with the remnants of Venice, right? Yeah, Venice. And light patrols around Leon is just in case of like monsters and whatnot. Because as far as we know, the miasma's still there.
You know, you make a good point about monsters, actually, but I don't think that necessarily helps your cause, because, monster patrols and border patrols you're still pulling from, like, a limited pool. It's not that monsters come from across our borders, it's that they're kind of everywhere, and we need to be vigilant of them at all times. I mean, I don't think we even really have a satisfying answer in all of FFP for where monsters come from. They just kind of
just pop in.
I don't know. So, like, you know, over concentrating on our borders, especially since we have fairly long ones, if we're talking about 2 or 3 kingdoms. Venice juts into our land, so it has a, like, longer border than you would think. Like, it longer than it would look. But kind of committing to that takes away from our army's ability to defend from monsters. That wasn't a thing I had considered, because there's not necessarily like a real life equivalent to that, you know? Like, but in a Final Fantasy world, that would be a very serious obligation of the national army, and that would be, you know, these are the things that you take into consideration when you allocate your resources. And especially with a
Well,
big country like with, and this has parallels to Russia and why people like, there's so many things inside of their country that they aren't able to really do and protect right now. The fact that they could even get a drone into the capital right now is just symbolic of how underprotected the country has become to extend itself into Ukraine. And just
that
kind of a
is true.
representation of what could happen to us if we overcommit in defending our borders in a time when there's realm scourges, there's monsters popping up everywhere all the time because reasons, there's just and we have a lot to rebuild, as we've both agreed upon. I just think that, defending our borders, while it may be important, it's kind of like a fifth order concern, and we just don't have the army for it right now. Maybe if recruitment programs work out, we bring in a lot of refugees, they join up and they want to pick up a patch of swampland in the south and turn that into something. I'm happy to let them do it. I think that's the best path forward for Wezette into the future, and I think it's the only path forward that makes us stronger moving forward.
Now, here's where the real debate becomes: how do we defang the nobility? How do we take these fiefdoms that are within our land and dispose the nobles? That is something that we have yet to talk about, and this can go one of multiple ways. Especially with Rosaluna, I could see her taking very much the route that happened in in either Russia or in during the French Revolution with the guillotine of all things.
Yeah, I was just imagining the way that Glaciela delivered the finishing blow to Curie and thinking she would be a fan of the guillotine herself. I mean, she's got a monarchy and nobility body count at this point, so I think she has at least one way that we can say within lore that she's comfortable with dealing with this problem. I mean, Curry wasn't necessarily in self-defense. He had already been run through by a spear multiple times before he fought Mont, and she showed up after that, but
that is true.
But I get it. I personally, I did it. I understand why I did. I get it.
One of the big things that I can see happening as far as Rosaluna, she wants it to be done almost immediately. So we're looking at, there was an event. It like the Red Parade or something that happened in where some minor lords and peasants all banded together in France, and they stormed the nobles' estates and drugged them out of their homes and just killed all of them. That's something I can see Rosaluna doing. Very much so. She's very much, despite being a noble,
she's pretty gung-ho. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, she's pretty dang communist. I'm just going to put it out there. Like, now, there is a distinction between a communist and a Nazi, so, communist...
Yeah. Yes, obviously. Thank you. Good. I'm glad you at least understand that. Jeez.
I do know the difference.
October Revolution Parade. Oh, wait. What? No.
No.
What'd you say it was?
It was... Oh, God. I'm known as the Bloody Sunday Massacre.
Wrong one.
Under the weak-willed Romanov Tsar Nicholas II, who ascended the throne in 1894, Russia had become more corrupt and oppressive than before. This is kind of where I was leading at the beginning. On January 22nd, 1905, a group of workers led by radical priest Gregory Apollonovich Gapon. Sorry, Internet, for butchering that. I'm not Russian.
Understandable.
Despite my family coming from Carpathian Mountains, which used to border Germany and Russia back in the day, before Germany got split into West and East Germany by Russia. The Iron Curtain. My grandfather never really taught me how to pronounce Russian names, so I apologize. They marched to the Tsar's winter palace in St. Petersburg to make their demands. Imperial forces opened fire on the demonstrators, killing and wounding hundreds. Strikes and riots broke out throughout the country in outraged response to the massacre, in which Nicholas responded by promising the formation of a series of representative ensembles, or dumas, to work toward reform. Internal tension in Russia continued to build over the next decade. However, the regime proved unwilling to truly change its repressive ways, and radical socialist groups, including Lenin's Bolsheviks, which became stronger, drawing ever closer to the revolutionary goals. The situation will finally come to a head more than 10 years later, as Russia's resources were stretched to the breaking point by the demands of World War I.
Okay.
And this leads into why the Tsar and the Romanovs were murdered. So,
I see how you get there from the historical parallel, but and I could see how you could make a case for either of them being a representation of communism in this situation, in that there isn't like a lot of depth to their political characterization. We're really just running on a few factors here and like the parallels that their country has to a real world country. But
yeah, we're
really, I feel
using World War logic.
I feel like both of them are very much capital L liberal. I think I forget which one's lowercase, which one's capital, but like liberal democracy, like the just voting, the U.S. What we do here, what all of our politics is.
You mean a constitutional republic?
Not necessarily, but just
we're not a liberal democracy. We're a constitutional republic, and that's something people that gets lost in translation. That's why we elect representatives to our state, and then the state represents the will of the people to the overall government. It's because we're a republic, not a direct democracy.
We're not a direct democracy. No, but liberal democracy doesn't have to be a direct democracy. It's a lot more broad than that. There's a lot of different ways to do it, in which the way we have done it is one. Other liberal democracies that maybe, well, I think actually most of these are.
You might be thinking of Britain.
Constitution? I mean, like, well, no, they're another example of the same thing. You could talk about Japan. I mean, like most countries in the world are liberal democracies in general. Like it's a very broad term for the system, the broad system of government that came after kind of our monarchical phase. You see what I'm saying? Like I don't mean to say like I know that both of those words have kind of loaded definitions individually, but the concept that I'm talking about.
So, a liberal democracy emphasizes the separation of powers, an independent judiciary, and a system of checks and balances between branches of the government.
Exactly.
Basically, a multi-party system with at least two persistent, viable political parties.
Yeah, exactly. What most countries in the world do now. If you want a really good example of this exact same thing happening with the exact same dynamics, you can look at the change between The Legend of Korra Season 1, after the monarchy is defeated in the central city or whatever, and what they put in place directly afterwards, which is much more in line with, you know, they immediately elect a like pseudo-president and everything. They're voting just out of nowhere. I feel like that's kind of what the story is trying to do here, because
the transition of Avatar into Korra, yes, that is a good representation of that.
Was that what happened in between seasons? Okay.
Yes,
or in between shows? I thought it happened in between the first and second season.
No. It was already pretty much a democracy in the first season of Korra. But
I thought what they had in the first season of Korra was actually cooler. They had like a council leadership or something.
They did.
I thought that was interesting. It felt more like a Congress than like a single ruler, which is what they kind of ended up going into. So like they got a really lame form of liberal democracy versus a cooler form of something less familiar. I don't know what exactly to call it. But like,
But yeah,
I feel like us writers, whatever, in the modern age, especially when we're imagining like what comes after you overthrow the monarchy, we just automatically assume whatever our most comfortable form of liberal democracy, or comfortable form of like current politics is, and for most parts of the world, that is liberal democracy. If this was written from a Chinese perspective, it might be going into a different place, but if this is written if this is being translated or localized for a more like America-centric audience, like the global, an English-speaking audience, those are mostly liberal democracies themselves. Or you're looking at this from a Japanese perspective, also a liberal democracy. That's just kind of what they imagine comes after the monarchy. So I doubt that either of them is actually meant to be coded as communist. Instead, I think it actually makes more sense to see them as like Glaciela being the liberal in, our common parlance, and Rosaluna being the conservative. But I wouldn't say that either of them are really a communist. But I get how you say that, because we have made a lot of connections between Wezette and Russia, and I think those are pretty valid. I just don't think that any of their rhetoric really backs up anything too communist. I think if anything, it gets into really like lofty democracy makes you free type of shit, but like not fully communist rhetoric.
I don't exactly expect them to pull like what was that anime with Code Geass? I don't exactly expect them to pull a Code Geass and have Rosaluna or Glaciela completely go absolutely bonkers and murder their own civilians. I don't see that happening, at least not now.
No,
I think
that's more of a Curry
thing. Like, yeah, they've already gone through that phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be a constitutional monarchy, very much like what Britain has. Where Britain has a ceremonial constitutional monarchy, where they have representatives that deal with all of the governance, but they still have a king or queen, but they're just ceremonial. That's something I could see being done more realistically, to be honest. I was leaning in because of the parallels with how the overall world is right now. The fact that in Wezette there is no industrialization. They're on the brink of starvation. They're in a civil war. Like, communism, that's a breeding ground for...
I didn't even... Oh, man, I made that too complicated. I could have done this all within ffbe lore. So... but I have to spoil part of Season 3 for you. Are you okay with that? Wait, no, you probably already see this coming, because this part of the story happens way too slow in the background anyways. Reagan ends up becoming president. They go from Palladia having a monarchy to having coming together to elect Reagan as the president. So that's kind of a good example of it. Like, just immediately shifting between monarchy to like what we have now, like with no steps in between. That's kind of like how, I mean, it's not very historically accurate. That's kind of what we're butting heads with, but that is how a lot of writers seem to imagine it happening. But I think what you're saying does make a lot of sense, because like, even if they do go into a democratic thing in like a couple more chapters or something, where the people choose one of the two of us to lead, they're still choosing between Curry's daughters, and functionally, how much does that change, other than it means that the next person that they pick might be different, but like, I don't know, what are our term limits? Do I go until I die, and then what happens? Because usually when you have a leader until you die, no matter what philosophy you're into, that tends to either fall apart or turn into a secession of monarchy itself. So
see, this is, remember way back several months ago when I found out about Dario's daughter and I was like, wait, what type of monarchy is Horn? Is it primogeniture? Is it immediate relation? Like, this changes a whole lot of shit.
I do have an answer for that, because I think I do, in that of the kingdoms that had kind of an immediate answer, I think, no, really the only one that didn't have, I guess Moraga didn't have any heirs. That's what made that complicated. And then we're having a civil war, so that's what made us complicated. But the throne went really quickly to Queen Macherie, and pretty decisively. So I feel like that baby isn't as big of a deal. I don't know. They could always write it in as some sort of a plot twist later on, but I don't feel like they have any trouble having a queen. They took to it pretty naturally.
It doesn't seem like it, no. But again, primogeniture is the state of being the firstborn child. Obviously, we do know that Horn practices Leonis practices primogeniture.
But does that like fall down a generation?
It's the right of succession belonging to the firstborn child, especially the feudal rule by which a whole estate of an intestate is passed to the eldest son. So basically,
so we already know it's not necessarily like that, because it isn't. Well, I don't know, if there is no son, then okay. So
basically, we know
but also Leonis, Dario's child is Daria.
A daughter.
Yeah. So,
but it doesn't matter.
Son.
Primogeniture still takes priority. It's the firstborn child.
Even though Macherie was born before Daria.
Yes.
Okay.
Daria, technically, because she is born to the firstborn son of Horn, would have primogeniture over her aunts.
Well, that's certainly the way that Garvel seems to think it works. So there seems to be some basis to that.
Have you seen the newest? It's on HBO with Game of Thrones, the newest Game of Thrones spinoff.
No, I haven't seen the original Game of Thrones. I've not watched a single episode of Game of Thrones.
It's amazing. If you like political dramas, I definitely recommend it. Maybe one of these days I'll start. Maybe if I get bored enough, I own all the DVDs. Maybe I'll just stream it to the server. But in the newest one, it's called there's an entire lore on it where basically the king died and he had no heir. So they're going through the family to decide who has the most right to take the throne. And this is where basically the king that gets chosen remarries after his first daughter's mother dies in childbirth, right? And then he remarries his daughter's friend, and she bears him several sons. But he declared to the council that his daughter was to supersede primogeniture, and she is the firstborn child that she was to inherit. But on his deathbed, his wife lied and told the council that he wanted her sons, to rule. Thus beginning the civil war that leads up to the events of the Game of Thrones.
Oh. Okay.
So, it's definitely Dance with Dragons.
Okay, so that could happen. Yeah, that's definitely the way that Garvel seems to think that it works, and that's probably gonna... Since Garvel's connected back into Sodley, that might end up being a Sodley plot.
Yeah, I think we've gone way off at this point where...
Yeah.
But this is just... Like, I guess this episode's just going to be theory crafting.
Anything you want to say before I cut it out?
No. Hopefully people actually like these, and if they want to get more into theory crafting and other stuff, I'm more than willing to come back and not only debate, but we can theory craft together as well.
Yep.
Let's see if this takes off.
Yep, because I'm always happy to make the type of WotV content that other people aren't making, and there seem to be some holes in the ffbe lore universe, and you know, in terms of like creators and stuff, and I would love to contribute to that, and I would love to find the people who are excited about that, because I'm sure that the comments could get really fun in a video like this, with all the lore heads get invited to it. So I would be happy to see that. So if you like this video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, maybe share it with some of your lore happy friends on Discord, or join my Discord, hang out with us. That's going to be in the description, as long as ways to donate to the channel. And with all of that being said, I'll see you in the next one.